I believe there are burning questions from the participants. Yeah, I'll start with Dr. Adis first, and then Prof. Yep. Adis.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bosnian Muslim teaching at University of Malaya as a visiting. I appreciate both of your comments and both of your insights, and I've learned from. I would like to address one question to you, Dr. And one, or perhaps two questions to Dr. Zulkifli. I apologize if I didn't pronounce it correctly. What do we do as Muslims if we have conflicting interpretations or understandings of values? You have rightly emphasized values. What do we do when we have mutually exclusive understandings or interpretations of what constitutes, for example, justice, and how these values should manifest themselves in society? What do we do then? I, for example, consider myself as an Islamist, but I come from, I use, for example, word critical or progressive, you know.
Oh, liberal.
Because we all have to position ourselves. I claim Islamism just as much as you are, but my understandings of what constitutes justice or equality might be very different to another Muslim's understanding.
Yep.
Okay, and how importantly, how they manifest themselves in society, especially in terms of the legal application. So what do we do then? You know, so if my concept of gender equality states that women have the same social, political, and legal rights, and somebody else's concept of equality does not, you know, encompass that. So what do we do? Second question. You know, I was very pleased that I hear that the concept of maslaha and maqasid plays a important role in your thinking. We all know that Quran, when it was revealed in and addressed a particular social reality. To what extent would PAS be willing to entertain the idea that the socio-legal injunctions in the Quran were part and parcel of that urf, and that what doesn't matter, what matters is the maqasid behind them, but not the actual form? I know, so to what extent would your party and people in your leadership be willing to entertain this idea that what matters is the maqasid and the maslaha behind it, not necessarily the form? And many Muslim scholars are arguing that indeed there is no compelling reason as to why the maslaha maqasid argument should not apply to qat'i injunctions in the Quran and the Sunnah. And finally, Professor Zulkifli said that there are these absolutes. What if I have a methodology in place of the Quran and Sunnah that stipulates, or as the final outcome of this methodology of interpretation, my absolutes are different to yours? So would the more conservative, if I could call them, would the more conservative understandings of Quran and Sunnah allow me to claim claim ownership of my methodology of the Quran and Sunnah, that whose outcome could be, as I said early on, when it comes to the actual substance and implementation, might be exclusive, might be mutually exclusive to what you think your methodology stipulates. So I just hope that we as all Muslims are willing to be able to accommodate other Muslims' understandings of the interpretation of the Quran and Sunnah, even if they might not have precedence historically. You know, we know in history we have the minority view, we have the majority view. No one can, and what was sometimes a majority view later on might have been a minority view. We know that there are problems with ijma'. Ijma' can be restricted to one place and one time. Therefore, we cannot use Islamic legal tools such as ijma' or to say that these issues have been resolved once and forever, and therefore, there is no scope to look at them afresh. So nobody ever said in the past that socio-legal injunctions of the Quran are urfi and not necessarily part of the thawabit, part of the, So how about if I, on a basis of a very systematic Islamic, authentic, all those words, if I say, well, look, the concept of urf was marginalized in the classical understandings of Islam because because of, for example, of the concept of Salafism following in the footsteps of Salaf Salih, or because Sunnah and Hadith were conflated to be the same, So I can actually, and there are many scholars who have done this successfully, they have argued that certain interpretations, even if they are based on the qat'i meanings of the Quran, I'm sorry I'm taking so much time, are not necessarily Quranic in its universalist dimension, So so we have a problem here as well. We have these conflicting understandings of what constitutes universal teachings of Islam, and how they should this include. So what do we do there?
We take one more question.
Okay, thank you. Well, I maybe just to, I have a lot of questions and comments, but I'm not going to take too much time. Maybe I will suggest one thing to both of you by way of a comment and asking for a response. You were talking about the necessity for the time to be right, and also for repackaging. And you said that if the content was repackaged, then there would not be any disagreement. Now let me suggest to both of you that sometimes, I agree that there's a need to repackage, that there is a strategic dimension to all of this. If you present a law as hudud laws, people are afraid. But if you talk about just ethical laws, they may be interested. But let me suggest that even if the time is right, even if conditions are perfect for implementation of Sharia, of hudud, if we have repackaged everything such that they seem acceptable to people, let me suggest that there are still problems. And sometimes these problems have to do with our understanding of the context in which certain rules were implemented or they were revealed, and that there is a need to, to rethink the application in view of the different contexts today. And I want to give a concrete example. If you talk about the principles of retaliation versus what's the term for it? What's the general term? I'm thinking of blood, qisas versus diya, retaliation, blood money, right? Now, recently in Iran, a man was about to be executed for murder, and I think everybody has read about the story when he was the noose was around his neck, the mother of the victim approached him and forgave him, gave him a slap and forgave him, and he was saved from being hanged. Now, to me, that raises very important problem. What it suggests is, if the law is applied that way, murders would tend to be committed by people from rich families, because there would be a tendency for you to get away with murder if you came from a rich family, because you could pay the blood money. If you could not pay the blood money, then it would probably be a higher rate of execution for people under that category. It didn't even happen in Saudi Arabia. I think this concerns Indonesia. Families which had money were able to raise the money and pay blood money so that an Indonesian in Saudi Arabia would get off the death penalty. This kind of thing, right? So this is a fundamental problem. Even if the conditions are perfect, even if the repackaging was done, you will still be left with this problem. Now, if you understand the context in which all of this happens, in certain tribal societies, if you apply qisas, you apply the law of retaliation, that can result in endless warfare between tribes. It can go on for generations. Whereas if you allow for the payment of blood money, that settles the score. And there are many examples, even from the time of the Prophet, where this was applied, right? But we have to ask ourselves, in a non-tribal society like Malaysia or many Muslim societies today, can you allow the payment of blood money instead of retaliation, instead of qisas? Isn't it going to create that kind of inequality? So I think there are fundamental problems with with the way Sharia is conceived that remain even if the conditions are right, even if you have a perfect society, where there's no hunger and poverty and so on and so forth. When you do the repackaging and everything looks good in terms of the rhetoric of it, that's one point. About this has to do with interpretation, right? The other thing is, there are some things about which Muslims simply don't agree. For example, a lot of Muslims, including the ulama, do not agree that, cutting of the hands is clear, it is in the Quran. But what about stoning to death for adultery? Yet, all these countries you mentioned, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and even communities outside, such as in Nigeria, in northern Nigeria, do apply
the first thing they apply.
Yes.
The first thing they apply.
Exactly. And it doesn't need to be said that there seems to be an obsession with sexuality, right? Because first and foremost is zina and hijab. These are the most important issues. So, with due respect, if Dr. Zulkifli was the Prime Minister of Malaysia and was the judge in the Sharia court and was the executioner, I think I would be perhaps confident. But looking at the judging from the record of all these Muslim countries, judging from the conduct of our politicians, from the corruption of the civil service and so on and so forth, I have very little confidence that any of these laws can be applied with justice. And given that, as Ibn Khaldun said, that governments are as a rule unjust, I would rather that the state was a secular state and that secularism got the bad name than Islam.
Thank you. I think
All right, I will allow that for this question to be answered by you, perhaps then I would follow up. Dr. Haris, Jazakallah khairan for that very hadith, yeah, for that comment. Let me put it this way: your concern and your fear is well taken care of. No worry about that. I know what you are alluding to. We are not literalists in that sense. There are three dimensions to, if I may use those terms. There's a thing called fiqh, an-nusus. That's where people quoting the Quran, as I've said earlier, about الَّذِينَ يَرْمُونَ الْمُحْصَنَاتِ, for those who slander believing men and women. Those are textual things, and they are qat'i and whatever, those are. There is only the nas. Then there's a thing called fiqh at-tatbi'. How do you want to implement that nas? And in doing that, you've got to take into consideration another dimension, which is fiqh al-waqi'. That is the social reality of that context. So, taking it as a whole, you'll never get it, simply, literally implementing and cutting people's hand. So, those are very serious things. And I think it's very unfortunate that the impression people get when we start again talking about hudud is that everybody is going to be chopped their hand, and by way of how the punishment is going to be executed or implemented, and I hope we could put that right, because in the Chinese translation, they translated hudud as the law of cutting hands. That's it, as simple as that. So Chinese really fear. I've not managed to memorize that terminology, but I will soon do. They translated hudud as not a penal code as such. It's law of cutting hands. So the amount of reinforcement of fear and prejudice. Okay, so in that sense, you're concerned about maqasid, you're concerned about, those are very, very real, and especially us, as a political party, we cannot be literalists, of course. I mean, it's just suicidal, just counter to, what we should be and present ourselves. And of course, the ultimate of Sharia is justice. The ultimate of Sharia is justice. That is the supreme purpose of Sharia. It's said by Sultan al-Ulama Izzuddin ibn Abdul Salam, Inna syari'ata kullaha masalih, imma dar'ul mafasid atau jalbul masalih. And laqad arsalna rusulana wa anzalahumul kitaba wal mizan liyakuna an-nasa bil qist. So that is the supreme purpose of Sharia, justice. And if that is not achieved, that is the ultimate maqasid. Of course, maqasid is very well known. But I would also like to add on, beside the 5 that we are all used to understand, Ibn Ashur.
I'm familiar. I have actually edited a book on maqasid.
Okay. So in that sense, you don't have any fear with us. And I would like to say, maybe for the rest of others, that besides, Hifzuddin, Hifzul Aqal, Nafs and Nasab and Mal, what we as the Islamic Party would also like to stress, central to our messaging or political messaging, is al-adala wal-hurriya. That is special. That is the 2 other dimension that is not less. Dariyatul Khamsa is somehow now. So all the more. So let me allay your fear that past is not going to be simply
I don't doubt your sincerity, but it's just that you have to realize how it sounds. The Sultan of Brunei is saying exactly the same thing.
What it is?
No, that
he is above the hudud, as I was told.
But he's but he's telling the world, he's quoting the same ayat.
I don't know. I mean, is he above the hudud?
Huh?
He said that hudud is not going to be implemented on him. Did he say that? So that's how.
He didn't say that. He would never say that. Critics say that. Critics cannot imagine that the Sultan of Brunei would subject himself and his brothers and his son and so on to hudud. Critics of course say that, but the Sultan of Brunei himself will say that he is simply a servant of God, and that he will be under the hudud too, and he will quote the same ayat that you are quoting. He will quote the same hadith you are quoting.
Sure.
The Saudis do that too.
Sure.
Yeah, they all do that. But look at the reality of implementation. It's a reflection of the mentality of Muslims.
Just because just because it's done like that, therefore we could no longer, just because somebody has I think that logic is a bit of a fallacy if you go along that line. Because it has been done and it's been poorly done, that should have never been done.
No, we don't say that.
That is the logical of it. That is the logical consequence to your argument that way.
No, I'm not suggesting that.
Of course, I don't.
You need to answer specific questions about application, like the question I had about diya and qisas.
This is very special.
These are problems on the ground. If you can come up with solutions to how these things can be implemented, then I think people would have more confidence.
Sure.
Actually, I have problem with the two last concepts about adalah and hurriyah, basically, because when you talk about adalah means that nobody is above the law. So rather than promoting hudud, right? First of all, you have to ensure and make the sultans and the kings understand that they're not above the law.
Yeah.
You have to do that
Very
first.
much. Yeah.
There's no point in talking about implementing hudud to the people when there are some people who are above the law. There's no justice there. There's no adalah. And hurriyah as well. There's a problem because when you talk about hurriyah, there's a special clause in the hudud, enactment which was prepared by PAS, for example, that you are going to kill apostates. So where is the concept of hurriyah?
I think that's not that could not be said in one breath, because you've got to understand it in a more detail, because apostasy is to its punishment. So I don't like to be talking of hudud in an isolated sense, taking it from the bigger frame of Islam as the entire corpus of legal prescription. I think it's very wrong, giving a very wrong impression of hudud. Look at the amount of compassion there are in Islamic, and there is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hadith Qudsi, الرحمة يعني سبقت رحمتي
رحمتي سبقت
غضبي. This is very powerful.
My mercy has
preceded my wrath. And that is, and the entire embodiment of this is in the time of the Prophet. Look into Al-Ma'iz, case of Al-Ma'iz and Al-Ghamidiyah. I don't have to go at length on talking like this. But whenever the hudud has been, put forward, immediately you see that kind of, that kind of violent response. But it must be put in its own context. If there is a picture, a big picture, hudud, assume a small, and that's well hudud in the light of the entire, corpus of legal prescription of Sharia, derived from Sharia.
But if a man is going to be executed for being an apostate, then to tell him that hudud is just a small part of the whole thing and should be placed in context is not going to be. So
No.
those questions need to be answered.
Of course.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm not here to argue what Allah has said, although I can contextualize it and taking the maqasid of it.
The problem is more fundamental, and this was my critique. I have consistently tried to convey to you that classical Islamic law is not the inevitable, neither the best interpretation of the Quran and Sunnah. And for whatever you said, I can have my methodology of the Quran and Sunnah is also based upon certain presuppositions. I'm not claiming complete objectivity.
No, I wanted to answer that question.
Okay, because you have to understand that there is. My question to you is, you first of all have to understand that you regardless of the fact that you might have hundreds of scholars whose works we at least know on your side backing your argument, nevertheless, I can come up with a perfectly legitimate interpretation, manhaj of Quran and Sunnah that is going to undermine just about everything that you would say or claim to be Islamic. And I will say, no, mine is Islamic.
Right.
And yours, actually, I would say, is an aberration of an Islamic. So, to what extent are you willing to accommodate and debate with people whose manhaj of Quran and Sunnah stands on perfectly authentic ground, whose interpretation assumptions are different from yours, And are you willing to acknowledge that you yourself have subscribed to a number I have published a book on Quran and Sunnah methodology,
Okay.
in which I have delineated 7 major interpretational assumptions that classical Islamic thought has subscribed to, and as a result has come up with this fiqh. And but there are a number of different assumptions we can subscribe to, including Muslim groups in the past who have been marginalized, and because they didn't have political
I think the
power.
simple answer that you
Okay.
wanted me to
Yeah.
say is
So I just
al-ikhtilaf ummati rahmatun.
Yes, but ikhtilaf, a classical ikhtilaf,
Mhm.
is on many issues not consequential. There is new ikhtilaf, there is radical ikhtilaf, that classical Islamic scholars are unwilling to accommodate because it radically questions many of the presuppositions. For example,
What you are saying is essentially a new scholarship.
not new. It's trends that have been recovered from the
because
past.
because
that have been
you are now
marginalized.
saying that it is almost like you did not use the word. It's almost like abrogating what has been established all this while in Muslim scholarship. Yeah, suddenly you coming out with a new methodology and thoughts. I think it's always fair that must be subjected to discourse, profound discourse, and let's get all the best of fuqaha, the best of brains and the best of minds and the best of the knowledgeable to be in that. I don't think at all
But
no, what I'm saying is
unwillingness.
Yeah.
A priori.
Oh no! I think
Yeah.
you're stretching on the word unwillingness. I don't think that is the right word, because that in the spirit of al-ikhtilaf, adabul ikhtilaf, in that spirit, I think you must be willing, and the door of ijtihad, is always open in that sense. Okay, so that is not to just appease you, but I think that is coming from very principled position there, and I must say it in no uncertain term, and that is what is warrant of us for Bashir and Bari alladhina yastami'una al-qawla wa yattabi'una ahsan.
That is basically what I
Okay.
wanted to say, and it's
Yeah.
very pleasing to me that you would
That
be
is a very
willing
principled
to-
position.
yeah.
We can't debate on that.
Yeah,
But
I
You
think-
must allow for that plurality, for the adabul ikhtilaf to for the ummah to perchance, and perhaps you have got something that is deeper nature for this.
Because I sympathize with you. I know that you are sincere in your belief. You really believe that what you understand to be God's law, what you understand to be the right principles, are, and a part of your identity, and they are important. But perhaps you are not. You have not been exposed to certain other interpretations that are held just as dearly and that are thought to be just as embodying God's will, or or
Yeah.
approximation of it. And I just even in the context of Bosnia, where I come from,
Okay.
I see that there is this unwillingness to entertain. First of all, there is unwillingness to even be aware of one's own presuppositions, interpretations.
I think that's very unfortunate. If you, very
It's the same
unfortunate.
in Malaysia.
Yeah,
It's the same in Malaysia.
and
I can't speak for others.
Yeah.
Then I'm
Yeah.
speaking for myself.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I must qualify that.
And in Bosnia, Bosnia is a completely different dynamics. But if I go to an imam and he says something in a
Oh, no,
khutbah,
of course.
and then,
There are always those around here as well. I mean, you
luckily we
to-
don't have to deal with it at a legal
Yeah.
level, But my experience with Muslim scholars who have traditional educational background
Mhm.
is that their ikhtilaf is very narrow.
Yeah.
And I think
you don't have to convince me. I'm
Yeah.
more than convinced
Yeah.
over what is happening in Malaysia. It's
So,
it's
I just
unfortunate.
I just hope that there's this we increase our understanding of these assumptions that guide our thinking, and that they can be questioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if I just can comment quickly, even Sheikh Rashid Ghanouchi for that matter, his ideas is seen heretical to some. I mean, others call him liberal and whatnot. So that's the kind of response you have when you are, face to face with people who have got very, I wouldn't want to use the word narrow, perhaps, or inflexible in that sense. So I don't think I belong to that kind of schools. So if we just would like to pick up on what Sheikh Rashid Ghanouchi said, perhaps not so much of what you were saying earlier, but more in the light of governance and government. That's what we are talking about today. Not in that context of nusus and others that I would really like to hear from exposition on that one. But insofar as governance and governments are concerned, that concept of al-faraghat or al-faragh, as said by Sheikh Rashid Ghanouchi, to me is about the best, is about the most insightful, way forward for Islamists, because it allows for rooms to, for not just for rooms to be, for uncharted path to be trodden by people like us. Anta alamu bi umuri dunyakum, is very powerful to me. And I'm quite fortunate to have been under his, when in those days, and I've listened to his discourse, and mashallah. So and the more we have ulama who are, not just ulama but practitioners, those who are just not, they are there, as practitioners, embracing whatever the demands of the quote unquote the jihad, the political jihad as such. These are to me, they are the torchbearers. They are they provide the compass for us, and they're not many anyway. And I think this is how I think very realistically we'll be looking upon for guidance and for very practical purposes.
Yes, can I just make a brief comment?
Yeah.
I'm very happy to step back and see this inter-Malay discussion. But I have to say I'm extremely pleased because the level of the discussion and debate is quite extremely mature and quite high, and I think that if that is the kind of public debate that is happening, then inshallah you won't go too wrong.
That is not at the public level.
Well, let
The public space is different dynamics.
Let me as a visitor give it a positive green.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
The other thing is that I'm also pleased because I was given the impression. You see, I didn't know about this debate until a couple of months ago. I was contacted by one of your media outlets who have my UK number, and they called me and they said, we are from so and so. I thought they were calling me regarding the things that I do and say and comment about. And they said, well, we want you to make a comment about the issue of the hudud law being proposed in Malaysia. I said, who is proposing hudud? What's happening? Why is... Anyway, so that was my first inkling. And the impression that I was given by the researcher, I said, listen, I'm not going to give a comment because you're talking to me about something that you've told me yourself, so I can't make a comment. But at the time, the researcher or the correspondent who was calling me gave me the impression that this was problematic between the Muslims, the Malays, the Chinese, the Indians, and the such. I'm pleased, I'm extremely pleased that actually the debate is between the Muslims themselves. I'm extremely pleased that that's the case, because it means that this is, in a sense, it can't be accused to being either a religious debate between religious minorities or an ethnic debate between Malays and others. It's a debate. It's a debate, and this is how it should be. It's a debate about amongst people themselves, amongst the same group of people who think alike, who want the same thing, who believe in the same way. They themselves are having this debate, and I think that that's a good thing. That's one thing that I wanted to say. The other thing is, Ustad Dhul Kifl, wallahi, I would have loved, and I offer my services for free, to come and give pass, and I'm sure that they don't need me, but I would love to give them some ideas in terms of branding, because you see, you said two things. I'm going to quote you here. The first is that you said that this issue of hudud has put PAS in a bad light, and it created, and you've lost. You're saying this in order to cement your theory that this is a principled stand. It's not a political for political gain, because if it was a political gain, you wouldn't have done it. You have far more to gain by not doing it, by ditching it.
Let me just say this. Let
Yes.
me interject here. It was attempted to be put as an agenda just coming close to the election last year. And I wrote an article that, put everything in perspective, and I was almost like ostracized for that. Forging an election beyond hudud. It was in The Edge. It was in many other papers, and I stick my neck out. It just cannot be. But, because it will just blur this contestation is about a contest of policy, performance, and leadership. How could you at the very last moment just throw this in that will cause everything in this race? So put you in context there.
So I'm taking this, and I'm taking what you said regarding how and you correctly when you responded to Dr. Adas when you're saying that basically you cannot isolate, just to use the term hudud and make it to mean but the problem is your whole story is not being told by you, it's being told by the media.
Yeah.
This is what we just said.
Exactly.
I don't describe myself, it's being described on my behalf. And therefore, when I enter these waters, I must prepare for the worst case scenario, and that is that, like I said about yesterday's event, 6 hours was reduced to 4 lines. And khalas, that is what, it's on the record, it's there. Surely they don't lie. So, and the whole context and the whole discussion was taken out. So of course, when you say something like this is how it's going to be portrayed. And now you can spend years and years and years trying to convince the Chinese in your country that it doesn't mean chopping people's hands. Why? What brought you to this in the first place, I would say? On a branding level, on a political level, on a media level, it was, I think, a shot in the foot. One. I'm not talking here about the concept itself, but you created a problem for yourself which you didn't need to. You could have done it in a far better way. Now, let me talk about a few things and try to respond also to some of the comments that were made. My problem with this is as such. When we talk about hudud, and in some other countries we talk about sharia. By the way, when we talk about sharia, it's the same thing. When actually I, as a Muslim, someone who gained a little bit of Islamic academic knowledge, understand sharia to be starting from the very wide concepts of hurriya and adala and humanity and love for the environment, to a very small chapter which is at the very end of those 23 years,
Hudud.
the hudud, to safeguard all those gains. But then it's a reduced. Now you speak to any intellectual academic in the West and tell them, we want to implement Sharia. To me, as a Muslim, I understand this to be implementing human rights, freedoms, equality, transparency, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom. That's what I mean by Sharia. But is how it's going to be understood by the other? Of course not. And therefore I stay away from this word. Not because it's a bad word, not because it's a dirty word, but because it is misunderstood. And I do not control the editors and the producers and the headlines in order to add the package that is required for people to understand exactly what I mean when I say Sharia. So I shouldn't say it, if I may just continue this point. So what I fear is that, ultimately speaking, this is what the discussion has been reduced to, as a result of the terms and the ways in which this was presented. And this is problematic. The other thing is that this internal debate, I fear, and this is where I agree with you, that I only wish that the debate would be this high. I pray that the debate remains this high. But on the ground, on the street level, this is creating a different debate that we're not privy to and we're not in control of. And you know what that debate is? Good Muslim, bad Muslim. In fact, Muslim and non-Muslim, kafir. This is being used now, and I'm telling you without even knowing, without walking the streets of towns and cities across Malaysia. Oh, you support hudud, you're a good Muslim. You're not supporting hudud, it will get inside your mosques. This discussion will get inside your houses, your homes. Believe you me. I'll tell you what, we have an issue in the United Kingdom, which I have to say, I don't usually like to take credit for things, but this I'm going to take credit for. I warned people against. And that is the creation of establishments for halal meat certificates. I warned people against this. I warned our South African brothers against this 10 years ago in 2005. They invited me to the inauguration of their South African halal institution, and in the opening they asked me to say a word, and I said, I don't know whether you want me here, but really I don't think this is a good idea. And at the time, when they harangued me, and the ulama in South Africa are brutal, by the way. I mean, your ulama here, they are the sweetest, they are the kindest, they are the most lenient. You haven't seen the ulama in South Africa. They are brutal. And they harangued me, and they, to the extent that they said, Ya akhi, okay, fine, so I'm wrong, khalas, I'm wrong, let me walk out. And they know, they wanted me to retract it on camera. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, I said to them, ultimately what's going to happen is that these certificates are going to turn inevitably into money-making machines and start to compete against one another and start slandering each other because they are built on different criteria. All of a sudden what you will have is your son will be eating according to a certificate, your daughter will be according to a different certificate, your wife will be having to cook 2 meals, not just one. And adding next to the dish the kind of certificate that she has cooked. You know, 2 years later, in 2007, 2008, 3 years later, I went back, and on the way from the airport to my hotel, the brother said, you know, wallahi, and I had forgotten about it. He said, you know, brother, wallahi, ya akhi, we have, and the problem that you spoke about. I said, what problem? What did I speak about? And he said, remember this? And I said, yes, vaguely, I remember. He said, do you know that yesterday we had a wedding ceremony and people wouldn't attend and wouldn't come from the family? Because because you need to check. If you're invited to an iftar on Ramadan, you need to check. Oh, which certificate? No, this? No, you're not halal. You're haram. And I said to people, this is craziness. And the same thing happened in the UK 2 years ago, and I said to people, don't do this. All of a sudden, now we're inviting people to conferences, to events, and the first question they ask is not about the content, not about who you're bringing, but in the chicken sandwiches, is it going to be according to halal food certificate or HLC or HMC or whatever it is? Seriously, this is, ya akhi, any discussions. I'll tell you what, let me be out there. I'm not an alim, I don't profess to have ilm that gives me the qualification to pass judgment, but I'm telling you here, if this provides a reason to divide, then this is an issue that is haram. If it's going to divide society and community, it's haram. Because ultimately speaking, let me tell you this, we gave the name of Rashid al-Ghannouchi. Rashid al-Ghannouchi is the most powerful person in Tunisia today. He doesn't have a title, he doesn't need a title. He doesn't need to be president, he doesn't need to be prime minister. But everyone knows that nothing strategic in Tunis goes by without Rashid al-Ghannouchi saying yes or no. Rashid al-Ghannouchi can implement Sharia tomorrow. When asked, when demanded, when harangued by his fellow Islamists in other countries, will you enforce hijab? Will you ban alcohol at least? Ya akhi, never enforce. Ban alcohol. Alcohol is clear haram. There is no question. قطعي الدلالة قطعي الثبوت. No Muslim in the entire world can discuss or argue about صح? About alcohol being banned. طيب ban alcohol. Restrict alcohol, ya akhi. He said something which I think is golden. He said, the last thing I want to do is to create a society of hypocrites. Yeah. They wear hijab because the law tells them they must. They refrain from drink because they will be punished by jail or the such because if they did. That is the rule. We want people to subscribe to our values because those values they believe and are convinced are in their best interest, to their welfare. This is a divisive issue. Why do you go down that line? Why do you pursue this? It's divisive. Create the intellectual debate, the intellectual foreground. Have that debate. Have those discussions. Have those seminars. Have more and more people gradually buy into the general idea. And then propose it when the climate and the condition is right. Do it in the right way. Get some media on board. Get them to discuss. Tell them, we're not proposing anything here. I'm just merely asking questions. We have a problem. How do we solve this problem? We are proposing that this is the way. I want PAS, when they talk about hudud, I want them to talk about the whole system that then deems hudud necessary. Talk about social justice. Talk about equality. Talk about no one being above the right. That is hudud to me. That is sharia to me. Why do we need to descend into the level of stoning and cutting and chopping and whipping people? Why? Why do we constantly propose lines?
Could I just interject you there?
Of course.
If those environment of where we are engaged in society, taking all opportunities, all rooms, when this ulama and others, Da'iyah speaking, that is what has been presented. And I don't think there will be ever a point where, enough has been said. It's an ongoing process. Therefore, not to be impolite to you.
No, not at all. No.
What I'm saying is, it's always been taken in that light, the bigger picture of the Sharia. And then this hudud coming, when the minister in the parliament challenges PAS to present something that is already in place in PAS from 1993.
You took the bait.
It's okay. It's okay. You can say that, as if we do not know. It's my response to you. As if we politicians do not know. Everyone's saying that as if we are so naive. But I say this to all. And this is very political now. Because he thinks that I don't have that political reading. If we do this, I said in a big gathering, if PAS is if PAS is to undertake this, winning it or getting it implemented, it's just undertaking the issue. To the Malay constituency, you are never assured of any increase of votes. But if we don't do this, we are sure to lose vote. So you do your damn, you don't do your damn. It's between a hard
rock
place and a rock.
So
this is what you must understand.
Good. No,
this is the context. You were talking about context. This is the context.
Let me once again assert. I don't know the basic information. I don't know the people behind. I have ultimate confidence and trust that the people doing the thinking and devising the policies are competent, qualified, wise, knowledgeable, God-fearing people whom will come to a judgment. I'm speaking from a political perspective. I'm speaking not from a sharia, not from a fiqh perspective. I'm speaking from a political perspective. This issue, the question that I would ask as a normal person is, why now? Why now? What is the reason? What am I trying to address? When I propose as a political party, when I try to address an issue, I must lay the premise. For instance, I'm now preparing for an international conference on political Islam and the West perception vis-a-vis political Islam to be held in mid-June. The very first paragraph in the project that I'm writing is the concept paper. Why is this conference needed? So the question is, what is the concept? What is the concept idea? What is the theory? Why this is needed? Now, I'm pretty sure there is. But has this been as a result of a political wider debate? Because the thing is, there are certain... listen, any political party must be given the freedom to propose whatever policy they want. That's the whole
democracy.
idea of a political party. My question is, you're proposing a policy that has implications that are so wide and so deep and so profound that I question the wisdom behind proposing it at this moment of time and in the way that it has. Now, you might say, and I'm pretty sure that that's the case, as I said, that you know the package. You know that when you're talking about this, you're talking about the Sharia, about the whole concept we're talking about. But the thing is that the debate that's going on doesn't encapsulate the ideas that you're talking about. Those who are talking now and discussing hudud, and I'm talking about the Muslims, I'm not talking about those who are weary in any case. I'm talking about the Muslims, the way that they're receiving this is about hudud. They're not talking about Sharia as a whole construct, as a social, economic, political construct that is built on the values and principles that we believe in. The other thing is this. Can I just say, and regard me here as someone who comes from a minority, and let me say this. And this is, by the way, secondary. This is not important. You can throw it out of the window if you want. But when we talk about Muslims being all around the world, you need to also spare a thought amongst your whole thinking about your Muslims in countries which will receive this news and persecute their own Muslims as minorities because of what you're doing. I mean, those idiots, those criminals in Nigeria, what kind of damage have they done to me as a Muslim living in the UK? What kind of harm have they brought to Muslims living in India, living in Latin America? Untold harm. They are idiots. They are as far from Allah as anything I can imagine. Idiots. I say, when you think about these issues and how they are dealt with in the media, spare a thought for the billion Muslims who are living under the mercy of being as minorities. Living in, for instance, if this was packaged to show that it was to undermine or to oppress the Christians, imagine what kind of response will be from Christian countries, to their Muslims. Imagine if it was packaged to show that Hindus are being suppressed. Imagine what will happen to the Indians already oppressed in India at the hands of Modi. It'll give him just another, arrow in his quill to beat the Muslims with. So what I mean is that I think that this needs to be, thought better, packaged better, and politically the political considerations are undeniable. And by the way, even when, and I'm going to sort of trespass a little bit on even the fiqh issue. This is, whilst yes, قطعي الثبوت قطعي الدلالة, but hang on. It was only a couple of years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ that Umar bin al-Khattab actually went against the very clear قطعي الثبوت قطعي الدلالة ayah, and he suspended the hadd of theft because the conditions.
May I just did not respond to your earlier proposition that we are well in context of those conditions and whatnot. But of course, again, that's not the entire argument. You have Sheikh Muhammad Taqi Osmani,
yes,
coming from a federal judge and a very astute legal mind, and I don't have to, say to you here,
yes,
that he is of the opinion quite opposed to Sheikh Qaradawi,
yes,
that you don't have it to have all those prerequisites well in place. Along with it, you actually improve it. It's just a chicken and egg situation. So I don't have to argue on that.
That's fine. That's fine. No,
because I just want to put you.
I'm proposing my thesis, and I'm pretty sure that some of the points.
I'm in agreement with you as to why it has got to be, all those prerequisites in place. Perhaps my mistake. I didn't emphasize.
I
should have said that earlier.
I'm pretty sure that the group of people we have here, and with the scholars and the luminaries that we have around the table, I'm pretty sure that we understand that this is an intellectual discussion. And this intellectual discussion means that we come from different perspectives, with different ideas, trying to add to the bucket of knowledge, to the pool of knowledge that we all have, from which our brothers can then maybe derive and take stock from and make policy. So I think I'm going to stop at the final point. There is an authentic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when it comes to al-hudud, and this is the very few instances when the word hudud was used. Idra'u al-hududa bi-shubuhat. It was actually using al-hudud in how not to implement al-hudud. Avoid hudud. Idra'u al-hudud. Prevent, stop, avoid carrying out the hudud when there is the least element of doubt. I would suggest that the least element of doubt here is not merely that the evidence is questionable, like for instance the verse quoted about the 4 witnesses in the case of a slander and only finding 3 or such. No, it goes far beyond that. It's about the shubuhat being of the context itself, that person having committed what they did. Are they, were they in need? Were they suppressed? Were they educated properly? Did they have full rights and freedoms to behave like a sane, normal, rational human being should? So all these are issues of shubuhat. So the question is, to me at least, whether it be in terms of the conditions, economic, justice, rights, freedoms, education, knowledge, all these things, lacking, I mean those elements are lacking, we have sufficient shubuhat not to make this an agenda. And by the way, I'm pretty sure the PAS has many other very important, probably even more important political issues and political projects that it's proposing. I'm pretty sure of this.
No, you shouldn't have even said that.
Really?
You should have assumed that to be a matter of fact.
It is.
And of course, and I've said that so many times, that this hudud thing coming out only 2-3 weeks ago.
That's the thing.
Yes, so minute.
But Ustad,
but you have all those things that we fought for.
Yes.
You should have read our benevolent state. This is why I think it's quite unfair for you to allude to that fact that we are overemphasizing this. No, it has got its own context, and I, for one, would like it to be over and done with quickly. But of course, that's not going to be the case. To me, this is an educational process. The whole discussion, and it's going to be good. At the end of the day, never get done. It's okay because understand, whatever. But this educational process we will not have a chance to do this had hudud not come up to the fore in this way.
But don't you think you're losing the middle ground?
You see, had we been only particularly, preoccupied with votes, we would have not mentioned anything about hudud. Let it go, But that's not the case. We are a political party who's got religious, principle present that. So, we have been.
Ustad, why is it? You see, because this question I asked the same of President Bashir in Sudan. I asked the same of President Morsi when he was in office. I asked of even my own father in the Iraqi Islamic Party. He was the leader of the Iraq.
I know your father a lot more than knowing you, perhaps. Once upon a time.
Yes. So I always ask them. I say, why isn't when an Islamic political party, when they speak, why is it that they need to speak about intrinsically detailed Islamic things?
Yeah.
Why can't, for instance, I spoke to Umar al-Bashir. I said, why do you speak about Sharia? Speak about justice.
Yeah.
Why do you speak about Islamic finance? Speak about ethical finance. Yes. Speak a language. How many projects have we presented as Islamic political party? And I regard myself from that particular I regard myself one of your members. Whether, don't ask me for subscription, but I regard myself as one. But I would like a comprehensive economic development project proposed by PAS for Malaysia in the next 20-30 years. And that's what I want the debate to be about. I want it to be about that. I want it to be about
I'll invite you to
educational capacity building. That's what I want the debate. But you see, I can have all that, and I can have books and volumes about that, and then add, a small thing like hudud, and everything else will be forgotten. So you see, the thing is, we are dealing in a fickle world. We are dealing in a world that is amplified or eliminated by a media that has interests. But I have to know that I'm dealing with that. I can't ignore that and say,
Can I give you a hypothetical situation? Had not this hudud come to the fore,
Fadal.
you coming around here,
Yes.
you'll have nothing called hudud on the agenda, right? Then what would you have? Perhaps MH370, the good and services tax, and all the other things. It's just God, by God design and divine intervention, that the hudud is on the fore. As a political party, we can't back out
If Sultan of Brunei hadn't made the announcement, would this issue have come up now, this time? If Sultan of Brunei had not, would Kelantan have raised, would PAS have raised the issue?
No, Prof. You got it entirely wrong. It's got nothing to do with the Sultan of Brunei. There is a complete disconnect with that. Nothing at all.
No, I mean, I know Kelantan's PAS raising of hudud has nothing to do with Sultan, but the timing of it, because we're talking about...
No, the timing was when the minister from the Prime Minister's department challenged Kelantan to come up with a private member's bill. Let me give you the background. I've not had a chance to meet you earlier. What was enacted in 1993 was not able to be implemented because stifled by the Act of Parliament 1965, the Act of Sharia, or Act of Mahkamah Sharia, that sort of limits the penal code allowable in the Sharia court to be by the formula of 356, 3,000 ringgit, 5 years imprisonment, and 6 cane. That will, of course, put hudud nowhere near to see the light of the day. So this was the reason why it has not been able to be implemented, among other, of course, a lot of other things. So this time round, when the minister challenged us for saying that the federal government is stifling the enactment of the Kelantan Sharia enactment, 1993, they said, well, we will facilitate. We challenge you to present a private member's bill, and we'll see how we get to allowing this to be, tabled and debated and perhaps, endorse it or whatever. So that's how it come into the situation. That's how it come into the fore again. So please, we have not sort of designed this such that become an agenda of the Ummah. It's going to be no, please. I hope you will not see us as naive as that.
Not so. But do you agree that now the agenda has been forced, that the debate has been forced on you?
Yeah.
I mean,
but we look at it from an educational point of view. We are the Democratic Party. We will never ever enforce this. Not on the Muslim, much less on people about the faith. And we want to see it through. Perhaps this time round we will again not get the mandate, but at least people understand that because this is an integral part of our faith. Let's see it through and see whether you will have the support. I'm quite sure we are far off from getting the support because, as you said, there's a lot of packaging and whatever that may not be part of the whole entire thing.
Gentlemen, may I please try to sort of steer the conversation back to the issue of substance, because what I hear from both of you, and I agree to some extent that there is the issue of packaging.
Yeah.
But it's more than packaging. Let me repeat: if the package looked perfect.
No, I'm with you.
And if the conditions were
it's problematic.
There's still problems with how
it's problematic.
And I think this also relates to what
it's
you
problematic.
were saying. How
it's very, very
laws are
problematic.
understood.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's problematic. No, I agree.
So,
and that we're not having a debate in this country.
Yeah, I think that has got to be a level, of ulama and this would have.
Would as I said,
would we facilitate? Of course.
No. Would a PAS be open to entertaining the idea that the injunctions in the Quran that are of socio-legal nature, and even long time ago, Abu Yusuf, the disciple of Abu Hanifa, said the legal injunctions in the Quran are urfi. We should look at the maqasid. The form doesn't matter because it addressed the social reality of that time. What we need to look is the intent behind it, not just stuck at the level of
isn't that why ta'zir came in?
Yeah.
The whole issue of ta'zir,
exactly.
that the ruler can choose, and therefore we didn't have prison sentences during the time of the Prophet. But that is a form of ta'zir.
But I am not seeing, because hudud, to my mind, and all this is the word Islamic didn't exist in classical Islam. There's no such thing as Islamic. It has to do also with identity, because you feel I'm not a Muslim if I don't implement it, hudud. And also, to my mind, really, it is we are chasing a false ideal. If we look at it at a level of form, not a level of substance and intention and the underlying, what matters here? The Quran had the intent. I mean, Ibn Ashur, unfortunately, Ibn Ashur never ventured out. He neither, I don't know why he never ventured out into applying maqasid to not just to the qati. You see, there is no Quran, although it has.
Would you agree? Would you agree with me, Dr. Anas, that this is a topic that is very, to me personally, I'll be honest with you.
Keeping it here.
No. I would be first to be the first to register for a discourse on this issue because this is the most to me. This is the first time I'm hearing this because even Ibn Ashur is not. But you're saying Yusuf. So certainly there must be a lot. This is why I called for a scholarship earlier. Because this is something completely noble in the sense that it has not been in the in the discourse,
the
at least in the mainstream.
Are not aware of this discourse.
Well, forget about the traditional ulama. We the new generation willing to hear and engage in this scholarship because if ever that is going to be proven, wallahi, this is. Yes, subhanallah.
The problem is that the ulama tend to monopolize.
Forget about the ulama. I mean, not forget about ulama.
The academics
sorry, I withdraw that. What I mean is there are many other ulama who are willing.
It's on record, by the way.
That's why I got to withdraw that. What I'm saying is there are very. I'm not sure whom you're talking about, ulama, but here what we're saying is that there will be enough of minds, religiously trained, that are willing to engage on this kind of discourse, and we will have you to be,
Well,
among
10
those.
years ago, I believed that hudud had to do with literal cutting of hands, but all of us evolve, and thank God, alhamdulillah, I have been made aware of.
I'm still learning a lot more by the day, and we, as they said, this is how we should be always in continuous improvement. I mean, we will. The minute you stop learning, that's it.
And that's very pleasing to me for me to hear, because unfortunately my previous experiences with I don't know which label to use, but let's say traditionally educated ulama is that they are unwilling to entertain points of view that either do not have historical precedence or that the historical precedence has been interpreted differently. And basically,
if you say that is not literal cutting of the hands, then you'll be written off as liberal and secular and westernized. There's no place for you in Malaysia. That is the dominant.
It's a good idea to have a series of debates.
Even the Prime Minister.
I really want you to present.
we need to question.
I agree with you.
Because there's an analogy with what you're saying. We shouldn't use the word Sharia. I actually disagree with you because otherwise, the word Sharia and Jihad has been monopolized either by the Western.
In that sense, I agree with you, Dr. Adis, and I disagree with him.
So it has been monopolized either by the Western discourses or the conservative discourses. So we've got
to be putting our position.
Yes, I want Sharia.
I like that.
So we have to
I like that. But let's do it together so we do it comprehensively. Not just you on your own so that they can corner you.
Yes, correct. Otherwise, we are surrendering the
last comment from Prof.
This is the last comment?
Yeah, last comment.
Maybe I just want to make a comment on another topic, which is what you started with on terminology.
Yes.
What you said about jihadi. I actually participated in a debate in the US about the term Salafism.
Yes.
There's a book that came out of it called Debating Salafism.
Yep.
And the same criticism that you level against the way jihad has been appropriated can also be made about Salaf and Salafi. Correct. It has become a dirty word.
Correct.
Whereas the word Salaf refers to something very pure.
Originally.
A lot of my research is on the problem of Eurocentrism. And I did a little study on the term crusades, right? It shows how the terminology is not simply a matter of packaging, although it is, that's a big problem, but it also distorts our understanding. So in Malaysia, when we teach about the Crusades in Malay, we use the term Perang Salib, which means Salibiyah.
Yes.
In the Arab world, they use the term Salibiyah.
Yes.
And in Urdu, in Persian, in Turkish. But what is interesting is that the Muslims in the time of the so-called Crusades never called them Crusaders.
Yes.
They called them Faranj or Ifranj, right?
Westerners.
And the reason is, I believe, that the Muslims of that time did not consider those wars as a Muslim-Christian war.
As religious wars.
Yeah.
Those of you who were at the event yesterday, did I not say the same? That the Crusades are packaged as religious, but actually they're political. They're political, empirical, colonial ventures. That's what I said yesterday.
We have appropriated a Eurocentric discourse and terminology and retranslated it into our languages, and now we forget what the Muslims in the beginning said about those so-called Crusades, and we are putting it in terms of using it as a religious war. So actually, what we need to do is to reappropriate and to reclaim and reappropriate our own conceptualization of all these issues.
Very good.
All right, thank you so much
you very much.
for
Thank you. Shukran.
Dr. Anas and Azizul and Prof and Adis and all the rest. And I believe that if you were to open it, I think it will end up tonight or something like that.
How much is the parking fee? You know, I might not have enough money for parking.
But
I can help you out.
yeah, I think
Do we
I
get
would
free
like
parking, by the
to.
way? Yeah, that's a good point. We get free
No,
parking.
there's a flat rate of parking. But I'll hand over to Julia to end up the session.
Thank you for your participation, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters.